Let's take a look back now at what sparked the latest events in Egypt and those demonstrations which began on June 30th. Unprecedented numbers of people took to the streets in different cities to call for the resignation of Mohamed Morsi, the country's first democratically elected leader of Egypt. CCTV's Nathan King joins us now with more on what triggered this military takeover. Nathan.
Yeah, well, you'll remember, Elaine, 2 years ago when the revolution happened. The opposition are now saying that this is a reset time, that they have reset the button on what went wrong up until 2 years ago. So the question is, how do we get here? Let's take a look. Sorry, we don't seem to have our report there, but what basically the opposition have been saying in the last few days is that the last 2 years of Morsi's rule took them away from the path that they were on the January 25th, 2011 revolution. Then, remember, it was the young that were out on the streets to begin with. The Turmoil movement that basically have been against Morsi's rule for the last four days are basically saying the same thing, that we want our rights back. They feel that the last 2 years, despite the fact he said he was going to speak for all Egyptians, have been basically a drift towards Islamification of the state, not addressing really the problems that they had 2 years ago, which of course was a terrible economy, a security apparatus that had been in place under emergency law for 30 years, and so they haven't seen that change. What's quite incredible, I think, about this is that they've taken just 4 days what they did 2.5 weeks 2 years ago. It's been quite dramatic, and of course, not just people in Egypt, but across the world have been struggling to keep up with events.
Well, you know, Hosni Mubarak was in power for quite a long time.
They called him the Pharaoh.
Morsi was only in for 1 year,
yeah.
and here we are again. So what will happen now to this region, to the immediate region, to the neighbors of Egypt, who really counted on some stability for a while?
Yeah, I think the main winner here regionally is actually President Bashar al-Assad in Syria. In fact, he issued a statement saying this is the death of political Islam. Remember, Morsi gave a speech very recently saying that he wanted Egyptians to support the opposition in Syria. That has a very big Islamic quotient as well, a lot of allies with the Muslim Brotherhood. And of course, Hamas in neighboring, in the Gaza Strip, who was supported and have affiliations with the Muslim Brotherhood and was supported by Morsi, and also were able to deal with Morsi during the Gaza conflict. They are a big loser as well. So there is that. But also, I think generally the effect on the region, you know, I was lucky enough to be there 2 years ago in Egypt at the first revolution. You could feel just the power of what was coming out of Tahrir Square emanating across the Arab world. So I think we don't quite know yet what the influence will be, but Egypt is the most populous state in the Arab nation, and I think the effects will be profound.
We saw those live pictures there, and it seems like the energy could be even greater than it was 2 years ago. Yeah. It seems there's been a lot of anti-American sentiment coming out of all this in recent days. We just had President Barack Obama there a few years ago making this huge speech at Cairo University where he was praised, and there was a lot of hope for this relationship between Egypt and the U.S. What now?
That seems a long time ago, doesn't it?
It does.
But it was just a few years ago. And you're right, the Cairo speech, remember, of course, was on 3 pledges, pulling out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and closing Guantanamo Bay. Well, you know, we're not there yet on nearly all of them. I think, you know, 2 years ago, you've got to forgive the administration because things happened very, very quickly. And they had a long-time leader that they could trust in terms of global security and Middle East security in Hosni Mubarak, and he went very quickly. It was a gamble for the Obama administration to call him to step down. And then, of course, the first democratically elected leader in Egypt, okay, it's from the Muslim Brotherhood, but they thought, look, let's see, the people have spoken. And he was very helpful, as I said, in the war between Hamas and Israel in Gaza, and so therefore they were trying to boost him. But I think the criticism of this administration is they perhaps took their eye off the ball in terms of delivering on all the promises for reform that was set out in the agenda to begin with following the January 25th, 2011 revolution. They weren't delivered. There was increasing Islamification in the justice area. And the secular Egypt, the Egypt that the West has dealt with for so long, from the days of King Farouk onwards, was kind of sidelined. And that's why they got very, very angry. And this is why you saw Obama's face with crosses through it. The US ambassador who had backed Morsi and called for demonstrations not to be ended, they really got caught flat-footed on this one, and I think there will be obviously repercussions.
And Obama's trying to speak to Morsi just a day ago. Nathan King, thank you for that report. We'll see you later on in our show. Sure.